The first time I saw a human, I laughed. Actually, that is not entirely accurate. The first time I saw a human, I thought someone had played a grotesque joke on the Galactic Council by sending us a hairless primate in a spacesuit. But then it spoke, and I stopped laughing very quickly. "Commander Vaxern," the creature said, extending one of its fleshy appendages toward me. "I'm Captain Elena Frost, Earth's diplomatic envoy." I stared at the hand. 5 fingers, no claws, no visible defensive capabilities whatsoever. My primary brain processed threat assessment protocols, while my secondary brain tried not to snicker. This was what had been causing such a stir across 3-star systems. This soft, vulnerable thing? "You may call me Vax," I replied, carefully touching the offered appendage with one of my 4 manipulator arms. The human squeezed. Hard. Disturbingly hard for something that looked like it should break if you sneezed on it. "Pleasure," Elena said, releasing my arm before I had to admit she was actually hurting me. "Understand you're the station's security chief?" "Correct." I gestured toward the observation deck, where the rest of the council representatives were gathering. "Your timing is, shall we say, interesting. We are currently dealing with the Krell situation." The human's facial features shifted into what my translator identified as a smile, though it looked more like a predator baring its teeth. "Yeah, I heard about that. The whole hostage situation on Mining Station Sigma-7. Nasty business." Nasty was an understatement. The Krell were apex predators from the Outer Rim, standing 3 meters tall with exoskeletons that could deflect plasma fire. They had seized control of Sigma-7 3 rotations ago, holding 47 miners hostage while demanding ridiculous concessions from the Council. We had tried negotiation. We had tried economic pressure. We had even deployed our best tactical units. But the Krell had fortified the station's control center behind blast doors that would take days to breach. They had made it abundantly clear that any aggressive action would result in dead hostages. We were, in the parlance of my people, completely and utterly stuck. "The Council is meeting now to discuss options," I told Elena as we walked through the curved corridors of the station. "Though I suspect we will simply be reviewing the same failed strategies we have been examining for the past 72 hours. "Mind if I sit in?" the human asked. "I might have some perspective to offer." I should have said no. Humans were not even provisional members of the Council yet. But something in the way Elena carried herself, the absolute confidence radiating from this fragile-looking creature, made me curious. "Very well," I agreed. "But please do not offer suggestions unless specifically asked. The Sienna ambassador is already in a foul mood, and I would prefer not to add interspecies incidents to my list of problems." The human made a sound somewhere between a cough and a laugh. "No promises, but I'll try to behave." The council chamber was exactly as depressing as I had left it. Ambassador Thrall, a massive Visian with 4 eyes that never blinked in sync, was arguing with High Counselor Marex about deployment strategies. Representative Kivanael from the Septar Collective was reviewing casualty projections on a holographic display, her scales shifting to nervous purple patterns. Everyone looked exhausted, and then Elena walked in. The room went silent. Every species represented, from the gaseous Valkyrie floating in their containment spheres to the insectoid Chitauri delegation, turned to stare at the human. I could practically hear their thoughts. What is that thing doing here? "Ladies, gentlemen, and honored entities," I announced, using the formal greeting protocols, "this is Captain Elena Frost of Earth. She is here as an observer." "An observer?" Thrall's voice could shatter titanium plating. "We are in the middle of a crisis, Vax. This is not a zoo tour." "With respect, Ambassador," Elena said, her voice calm and measured, "I think I can help." Marex, who had been silent until now, leaned forward in his gravity chair. The High Counselor was a Velric, one of the oldest species in the galaxy, and his 4 centuries of experience showed in every deliberate movement. "Help how exactly? You have no weapons technology. Your species has not even achieved faster-than-light travel without our assistance. What could you possibly offer?" The human smiled again, and I felt my spine tendrils curl involuntarily. "You're right," Elena said. "We don't have your weapons. We don't have your shields, or your plasma cannons, or your fancy exoskeletons." She paused, letting the words hang in the air. But we have something better. We have 4 billion years of evolution that taught us how to survive on a death world where everything, and I mean everything, was trying to kill us. Froll's laugh sounded like grinding metal. Primitive adaptations are hardly relevant when facing Krell warriors in fortified positions. Maybe, Elena conceded, or maybe you've all been thinking about this wrong. She walked to the central holographic display and pulled up the station schematics with a casual familiarity that suggested she had been studying them long before this meeting. You've been trying to breach the control center. A frontal assault. Classic military strategy. But the Krell are expecting that. They want you to come through those doors so they can mow you down and execute hostages to prove a point. We are aware of the tactical disadvantages, Kivanel said, her scales shifting to irritated orange, which is why we have not acted, right? But here's the thing. Elena zoomed in on a section of the station's infrastructure. The Krell are breathing your air, eating your food, using your environmental systems. They're apex predators, sure, but they're not adapted to space station life. They're used to hunting on their home world, where everything is straightforward. Kill or be killed. They think in straight lines. I felt something click in my mind. And humans do not. Elena's grin widened. Commander, we invented psychological warfare before we invented the wheel. We don't need weapons when we can make our enemies defeat themselves. The silence in the council chamber was so complete that I could hear the atmosphere processors humming 3 decks below us. You cannot be serious, Froll finally said, though his voice had lost some of its earlier certainty. You want to what exactly? Talk them into surrendering. Not talk. Elena's fingers danced across the holographic controls, highlighting specific sections of the mining station. Humans survived ice ages, plagues, predators that could smell us from kilometers away, and we did it without claws or fangs or armored skin. Want to know how? We got creative. We got mean. We learned that the scariest weapon in the universe is not a gun. It is uncertainty. Marex shifted in his gravity chair, his ancient eyes focusing on the human with newfound interest. Continue. The Krell have been in that control center for 3 days, right? Eating standard station rations, breathing recycled air, probably getting pretty comfortable in their little fortress. Elena pulled up the environmental system schematics. What if we make them very uncomfortable? Not enough to kill them. Nothing that would trigger hostage executions, but enough to make them paranoid. Scared. Desperate to leave. Kivanel's scales flickered between purple and orange. Uncertainty and irritation battling for dominance. The environmental systems are hardened against tampering. Even if we could access them, the Krell would simply use their own equipment. Would they, though? Elena asked. Their equipment is built for their home world. High gravity, thick atmosphere, a different chemical composition entirely. They need your systems to stay alive up here. And I'm betting they know it. I felt my tertiary brain engaging now, running simulations. You want to gaslight them. I want to make them think the station is failing, Elena corrected. Small things at first. Flicker the lights occasionally. Adjust the temperature by a degree or 2 every hour. Nothing dramatic. Nothing they can point to and say, look, sabotage. Just enough to make them question whether the station is as stable as they thought. Froll leaned back, his massive frame creaking against the reinforced seating. And then we escalate. Elena was warming to her subject now, speaking faster, her eyes bright with what I was starting to recognize as a very human kind of dangerous enthusiasm. We introduce sounds. Strange sounds. Whole stress noises, maybe. Or better yet, we fake proximity alerts. Make them think something big is moving out there in the dark. Something watching them. Something waiting. The Krell fear nothing, Kivanel said, but her scales had settled into a thoughtful green. Everyone fears something, Elena replied quietly. Especially when they're isolated, cut off from support, sitting in a metal box surrounded by the vacuum of space. The Krell are predators. They are used to hunting. But up here, they are the prey, and they know it. We just need to remind them. Marex made a sound like wind chimes in a storm, which my translator rendered as contemplative agreement. This is highly unorthodox. So, is holding 47 innocent minors hostage, Elena shot back. Look, you can keep trying to blast through those doors and watch people die, or you can let me try something different. Worst case scenario, nothing happens and you are exactly where you started. Best case, the Krell panic and make mistakes. I ran the scenarios through my tactical processors. It was insane. It was completely outside standard military doctrine. It was also the first plan anyone had suggested that did not end with probable casualties. I support this approach, I said, surprising myself. Frol's four eyes all focused on me simultaneously. You cannot be serious, Vax. I am completely serious. We have exhausted conventional options. Perhaps it is time to try something unconventional. I looked at Elena. What do you need? Access to environmental controls, communications, and sensor arrays. A team that can make subtle adjustments without being detected. In about 6 hours. The human paused. Oh, and someone who could do a really good scary voice over the intercom. Think you can manage that? Despite the situation, despite the lives at stake, despite every logical objection, my primary brain was screaming. I found myself making the chittering sound my species use for laughter. Captain Frost, I said, I think you and I are going to get along very well. The next 6 hours were among the strangest of my career. Under Elena's direction, we began the psychological assault. First, the lights in the control center started flickering. Not often, just once every 20 minutes. Then 18 minutes. Then 23. Random enough to seem like a malfunction, regular enough to be noticeable. At the 3-hour mark, we dropped the temperature by half a degree, then raised it by a full degree 90 minutes later. The Krell would not freeze or overheat, but they would notice. They would wonder. At hour 4, Elena had our communications specialist broadcast proximity warnings on encrypted channels she knew the Krell were monitoring. Nothing specific, just automated warnings about unidentified objects moving near the station. Objects that vanished when scanned. Objects that should not exist. By hour 5, we could see the effects on our surveillance feeds. The Krell were moving differently, more cautiously, more frantically. Their leader kept barking orders, but his troops were jumpy, weapons raised at shadows. And then Elena played her final card. This is Mining Station Sigma 7, she said into the intercom, her voice distorted through filters to sound mechanical and wrong. Structural integrity compromised. Life support failure imminent. Evacuation protocols initiated. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. We watched the Krell leader's face on the monitors. Watch confusion turn to concern. Watch concern turn to fear. 10 minutes later, the control center doors opened. The Krell came out with their hands raised and their weapons on the ground, and not a single shot was fired. As station security moved in to secure the hostages, Thrall approached me and Elena. I owe you an apology, Captain Frost. I underestimated your species. Elena shrugged. Most people do. They see we do not have natural weapons and assume we are harmless. They forget that the most dangerous predator is not the one with the biggest teeth. It is the one that makes you afraid of the dark. She looked at me then, and I saw something in those strange human eyes that made my spine tendrils curl again. Not malice, not cruelty, just a deep, ancient understanding of what it meant to survive against impossible odds. Welcome to the galaxy, Captain, I said quietly. Thanks, Commander. Elena smiled that predator smile again. I think we're going to fit in just fine. And as I watched the Krell being led away by security, still looking over their shoulders at shadows that were never there, I realized something terrifying and wonderful. The galaxy had been waiting for humans to develop weapons that could match our technology. But humans did not need our weapons. They had something far more dangerous. They had imagination, patience, and 4 billion years of experience turning fear into a weapon. They called humans primitive. They had no idea what was coming. If this story entertained or taught you something, please like and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us grow and bring you more stories like this. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next story.